万公里外的能量余波传到此处，
领会到挑衅我族的代价，
依然让你心惊。
狂妄！
三阵，
制图，受死！
罗峰，
缩，宇宙，
对付12名不朽，超越你的极限了。
实际亵渎，我族语态侵犯。
等好久，
人族之间的累累血就从你
借你的命也用。
Hello everyone, welcome to the Alrasta channel. Here, I will share spoilers for SwallowedStar episode 183. Remember, this is based on a novel, so it won't be 100% similar to the Donghua version. Okay, without further ado, let's dive right into the story. In the previous episode, Babata detected a large group, 12 immortals gathered on a desolate mountain. This group consisted of 3 different races: the Eternal Dragons, the Ka Wu race, and the Starlight or Crystal race. Each race possesses unique abilities. The Eternal Dragons are fierce and bloodthirsty, with massive bodies covered in scales. The Ka Wu race stands as sturdy as living rocks, while the Starlight race is nearly indestructible due to their extraordinary regenerative abilities. Soon Luofeng's ship landed quietly in the mountains where the 12 immortals were. They were still engrossed in discussion, unaware of the danger approaching. Suddenly, a loud boom shattered the side of the mountain. Mud, rocks, and debris crashed into their location, causing chaos. Once the dust settled, Luofeng appeared majestically in black armor, carrying a shield and a sharp blade on his back, ready to face the 12 immortal beings. Luofeng's presence immediately put the entire group on high alert. They were well aware of the World Master Star Devourer's reputation for being ruthless and cunning. A suffocating aura spread among the 12 immortals who had previously been confident in their collective strength. Despite this, they were too arrogant to retreat. With unwavering resolve and pride, the group refused to back down and instead chose to fight. A brutal duel ensued. 6 Eternal Dragons simultaneously unleashed soul attacks toward Luofeng, a devastating technique known for shattering opponents from within, striking directly at the core of their souls. However, Luofeng's extraordinary battle armor blocked over 99% of the attacks, leaving only a slight tremor that shook his core. Within that core, a slumbering beast god soul awoke with a thunderous roar, repelling the mental assaults, making the immortals' soul attacks seem like mere gusts of wind. As the deadly battle raged on, Luofeng relied on his various layers of defense. In the past, the Void Pagoda had been his primary passive defense, but now he possessed a far more powerful technique: the Beast God Howl, an active soul defense capable of withstanding even the strongest mental attacks from immortals. So powerful was this defense that it far surpassed the Void Pagoda that had once been his mainstay. The battle between Luofeng and the 12 immortals raged brutally atop a massive mountain that eventually collapsed. An energy explosion of unprecedented scale propelled thousands of other creatures outward, transforming them into tens of thousands of points of light that scattered across the expanse of space like meteors blazing through the dark night. From afar, the soldiers dared only to watch. They knew that anyone who dared to approach the center of the clash would surely be wiped out by the energy ripples. At the center of the battle, Luofeng was forced to fight in an increasingly destroyed environment. The 12 immortals, a combination of immortals from the Eternal Dragon race, Ka Wu and Starlight, attacked him simultaneously without pause, using their respective domains of law and special powers. Their domains attempted to suppress Luofeng's world projection, but Luofeng's projection field managed to withstand their pressure, leaving all the immortals stunned. They never expected such fierce resistance. Their previously unstoppable power now felt restrained. A relentless barrage of attacks came pouring in. Giant thunder hammers, colorful beams, and sharp energy waves filled the space, all aimed at Luofeng. When this combined attack surpassed the power of 1,000 world masters, even Luofeng's armor, which could usually withstand any attack, began to falter. He took multiple hits, hard enough to make blood spill from his mouth. However, Luofeng's fighting spirit only grows stronger. 10 years ago, facing 8 immortals alone, he had to flee. Now he stands alone against 12 opponents at once. Feeling challenged, Luofeng utilized the most advanced movement technique he had ever learned. His body split the air, creating shadows that made it seem as if there were 3 Luofengs at once to confuse and evade his enemy's attacks. After a series of swift movements, Luofeng immediately targeted one of the strongest opponents, Ka Wu Immortal, who wielded 2 thunder hammers. Using his best technique, the 7 absolute blade movement from his 7 new sword techniques, Luofeng swung a blade over 1,000 kilometers long, merging with the gigantic projection of the beast god. In a single deadly strike, Ka Wu's giant hammer was split in 2, his head severed, and his massive body ripped apart into 2 pieces, shattering into thousands of stone fragments that flew through the air. Luofeng immediately threw the star-eating plant to devour the fragments of Ka Wu, leaving the other immortals stunned and terrified. The other immortals reacted swiftly. They immediately joined forces to launch a full-scale attack on the star-eating plant that had appeared so suddenly. The frenzied attacks forced the golden plant to retreat, but part of Ka Wu's body had already been swallowed, causing the stone-like opponent to lose a massive amount of energy. The battle grew even more intense. The shattered Ka Wu screamed in anger as his body struggled to heal. The other immortals felt ashamed. Even with 15 of them, one of their comrades was nearly killed. This became the catalyst for them to fight to the death and work together to kill Luofeng. On the other side, the Starlight Immortals unleashed their ultimate technique, transparent threads emerging from their eyebrows, known as the Starlight Life Thread. These super thin threads were composed of their crystal cores, a highly dangerous final attack only used in extreme conditions. If these threads struck Luofeng, his chances of survival would be extremely slim. Seeing the starlight threads hurtling toward him, Luofeng immediately used the leaf of the star-eating plant Immortal as a shield. While withstanding the thread's resistance and the combined attacks of the other 11 immortals, Luofeng activated the Blood River Energy, a technique that enhances his strength and connection to the fluctuations of the universe's energy. He moved again in a new attack pattern, his bloody blade glowing along with the projection of the beast god, splitting the air and breaking through the enemy's attacks one after another. The battle turned into a duel of tactics and strength, between Luofeng's ultimate blade technique, the star-eating plant's defense, and the ultimate attacks of the 12 immortals. This was the true test of Luofeng's centuries of training, a battle where every breath and every threatening movement meant life or death, and a testament to how powerful the World Master Star Devourer of Misty Sand Island had become. The battle against the 12 immortals turned into a major test for Luofeng. At the beginning of the fight, he deliberately withheld his strongest technique, strike travel, to test the limits of his new sword techniques. As a result, he appeared to be on the defensive, but in reality, Luofeng was learning from every pressure and refining all the movements he had created. The harsh environment, combined with the combined attacks of his opponents, actually allowed Luofeng to explore and refine his techniques directly on the battlefield. At the climax, he released the energy of the Blood River and activated his best attack move. Instantly, 3 shadows of Luofeng appeared beside him, confusing all 12 opponents at once. The situation changed. Their attacks became chaotic, and they retreated from their formation. With a series of techniques from Dutchman's Pipe, Pensive, Nightmare, Refraction, and Burial to Hatred and End of the World, Luofeng continuously changed his attack patterns, causing the immortals to fall one by one. His shadow swords slashed mercilessly, and each new technique was used to slice through defenses, tear apart formations, and break the enemy's spirits. Some immortals who had focused on blocking the star-eating plant became the first casualties. As the golden leaves spread in all directions, 2 immortal dragons were torn apart and swallowed, causing the enemy group to panic. They realized that if they continued to hold their ground and spread their focus on the plant, their numbers would dwindle and they would eventually be eliminated one by one. That realization prompted them to flee simultaneously, scattering in all directions to save themselves. Luofeng, who had temporarily gained the upper hand, had to choose his target. He decided to pursue the warrior from the Ka Wu race, Long Suo, who had been his primary target. By projecting his internal world outward, Luofeng slowed the enemy's movements, then trapped and ultimately devoured Long Suo with the immortal golden plants. With one brutal attack, Ka Wu's giant body vanished, swallowed mercilessly by Luofeng's ferocious plant teeth. However, Luofeng's victory turned out to have long-lasting consequences. On the other side of Misty Sand Island, the immortal Ka Wu Marquis, named Fenya, or Boulder, immediately received a death signal from his comrade in arms, Long Suo. Enraged, he felt the loss of his only clan and generation mate. Overcome by emotion, he vowed revenge after learning that all of Long Suo's valuable possessions, including the soul-tracking item that could reveal his location, were now in the hands of the human race that had killed him. Meanwhile, Luofeng was aware of all the risks. He knew that Fenya might come to the battle site, but this was precisely what he had been waiting for. After 100 years on Misty Sand Island, he had never once fought directly against an immortal at the Marquis level. With confidence, he saw this opportunity as a new challenge to test the limits of his main body and whether his golden-horned behemoth could match the power of an immortal Marquis. He chose a random cave as his waiting place, using the time to reflect on previous battles, polish his 7 new blade techniques, and adjust his strike travel movements to fit the human body. Days passed in peaceful preparation. On the other side, the Fenya ship drew nearer, signaling the beginning of a far more intense battle. The clash between Luofeng and the strongest figure, the leader of the Ka Wu race on Misty Sand Island, who arrived with boundless anger and vengeance. After a long wait and risky training, Luofeng was now ready to face the decisive duel that could change the history of the entire Misty Sand Island. In a quiet cave on Misty Sand Island, Luofeng was completely immersed in training. His consciousness was connected to the virtual universe, repeatedly honing the new sword techniques he had formed over 100 years of bitter experience on the battlefield. He pits his 7 self-created blade techniques against a simulation of a fierce battle, yet he still feels something is missing. Every strike brings progress, but the overwhelming pressure and power of the beast god, the very essence of all close-range techniques, has yet to be fully realized. In that virtual space, Luofeng even compared his technical project to the early forms of the legendary beast god's weaponry, concluding that what he had created was already extremely powerful, but had not yet touched the true perfection of such a legacy as the techniques of Shi Luo Duo. He continued to wonder how to break through the veil of limitations, making his attacks as overwhelming as the beast god itself. Luofeng's mind wavered between doubt and conviction. His passion for creating his own unique technique continued to burn. Days passed in silence. Luofeng hardly ever left the training room, focused on one goal, creating an absolute technique that was truly his own. Finally, a warning signal appeared. Babata reported that a powerful creature was heading straight for their position. It was most likely Fenya, the immortal Marquis of the Ka Wu Misty Sand Island race, who was seeking revenge for the death of his brother, Long Suo. A moment later, after a long 12-day wait, Fenya's giant pyramid ship appeared in the sky, spreading pressure that burned the air within a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. Fenya, clad in fiery red armor and wielding 2 deadly hammers, descended directly onto the large lake. His aura of fire eroded the air, and his domain of fire collided with Luofeng's much larger and denser world projection. The meeting between the 2 tyrants of Misty Sand Island was truly tense. Fenya's fire domain, which had initially resembled a chaotic ball of flames, transformed into a disciplined array of energy as Luofeng pressed forward with his world projection. A mental battle over who possessed a deeper understanding of the laws unfolded. This was Luofeng's first encounter with a genuine immortal Marquis. He realized clearly that a Marquis's power wasn't merely about raw strength, but about how the laws of space and time were integrated into their defensive and offensive domains. The 2 stood facing each other above the lake, invisible pressure spreading throughout the surrounding mountains. Fenya, filled with vengeance, challenged Luofeng directly, making it clear there was no intention to forgive or merely intimidate. Luofeng, who had always craved challenges, could no longer contain the tremors of his spirit. He was truly ready to fight with all his might, putting to use the ultimate strike travel technique he had honed on the battlefield. In a matter of seconds, the 2 giant forces collided. Luofeng opened the duel, moving as fast as lightning in 3 circular shadows, while Fenya immediately swung his deadly hammer, exploding fire energy and spatial vibrations throughout the lake. The shock waves from their collision shattered the mountainous silence, marking the beginning of the most decisive battle of Luofeng's life. The clash between the two strongest beings in the 10,000-year history of Misty Sand Island, with their futures and reputations on the line in every slash, every blow, and every clash of techniques that unfolded there. Fenya, the immortal marquis of the Ka-Wu race, was now completely overcome with fear, a stark contrast to his usual confidence. He never imagined he would be facing the golden-horned behemoth, the strongest form of Luofeng, and only now realized that his opponent's true power was at the level of an immortal king. Every time the giant silver creature attacked, its speed was extraordinary, as if it could pierce through space and appear instantly in front of Fenya, then tear his immortal body to pieces. However, as an immortal marquis, Fenya was able to recover from total destruction, his body reforming in an instant. Realizing the situation, Fenya panicked and tried to flee, but fate had other plans. The golden-horned behemoth continued to pursue him, its wings, which had fully fused with its body, exerting immense pressure. The aura of an immortal king caused all the immortals on Misty Sand Islands to tremble in fear. However, despite being struck by brutal attacks multiple times and his body shattered into pieces, Fenya always managed to reform himself thanks to his nearly limitless immortal energy. Even when Luofeng threw the golden star-eating plant to end it all, Fenya managed to escape and reform his body again. Luofeng, observing from the peak of the mountain, began to realize the true challenge. The body of an immortal warrior at the marquis level, like Fenya, was not enough to be destroyed physically. To truly kill, there must be an extraordinary power, an absolute difference between the two sides, or by burning immortal energy to its maximum limit, pushing power to its peak, and shattering the opponent's core energy. However, as a novice immortal king-level immortal, Luofeng knew that if he continued to press forward, he would have to pay a heavy price by burning some of the vital energy of the golden-horned behemoth. But at this stage, that wasn't an easy option, especially since the power difference between him and his opponent wasn't that great. Fenya was also aware of this situation. He was too weak to fight an immortal king, but on the other hand, Luofeng, in his immortal king form, was also struggling to deliver a final blow that could completely annihilate Fenya's immortal soul and energy. They chased and slashed, struck and exploded, but in the end, the battle repeated itself without a conclusive outcome. Luofeng eventually reached a deadlock, pondering his strategy. He realized that destroying the immortal body alone was insufficient. He needed a way to burn the immortal energy or find a new means to completely annihilate an enemy as powerful as Fenya. At this point, Luofeng realized battles between immortals are not merely about momentary strength, but about technique, strategy, and the sacrifice of energy that can alter the entire course of an immortal warrior's life. In the midst of a life-and-death battle against Fenya, Luofeng finally found a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. All his standard attack techniques were clearly ineffective against an opponent with an immortal body. Even after being shattered or sliced repeatedly, Fenya could regenerate endlessly. Luofeng, with careful calculation, finally gambled everything on his trump card. Shi Wu's wings, the legendary treasure directly bestowed by his master, the Chaos City Lord. The Shi Wu wings were not only a perfect escape tool with unmatched speed, but their feathers possessed extraordinary cutting power, sharp as blades and containing mysterious space energy capable of piercing an opponent's immortal energy. When Luofeng's golden-horned behemoth had transformed to its peak power, flapping the Shi Wu wings at a terrifying speed, Fenya could no longer evade. Every time he was slashed, Fenya's immortal body was not only physically destroyed, but his immortal energy core was also eroded, little by little. Panic struck Fenya. He, who had always felt invincible, now had to face the destruction of 2% of his immortal energy every time he was hit by Luofeng's wings. Real pain gnawed at his body, causing his spirit to collapse. In an instant, Fenya lost half of his immortal essence and soul, until finally, overcome by despair, he chose to destroy his own body in the hope of seriously injuring Luofeng through a self-destructive explosion. However, this was the difference in the quality of treasures and power. Shi Wu's wings enveloping the golden-horned behemoth's body made the brutal explosion effect from Fenya merely a small bite on the armor and body of the golden-horned behemoth. As the battle dust settled, Fenya completely vanished, and his various belongings were immediately seized by Luofeng. Realizing that the battle had drawn attention, Luofeng quickly retreated to his secret base. He returned to the hidden palace surrounded by star-eating plants for maximum protection. This decisive victory left Luofeng thoroughly satisfied. Shu Wu's wings had proven to be not only an escape tool, but also a rare, decisive weapon of victory. Moreover, he had just proven himself capable of defeating an immortal marquis with absolute strength and cunning, solidifying his position as one of the most feared tyrants of Misty Sand Island. As he sipped wine and reflected on the battle's outcome, Luofeng's thoughts wandered. One thing was now crystal clear. The core of his power as a human and as a golden-horned behemoth could merge, and there might be a better way to combine the close-range combat techniques of both forms. This new realization made his eyes sparkle, as if a brilliant idea was igniting in his mind. A realization slowly emerged. The key to even greater power lay in the harmony between the sword techniques of the human body and the brutal combat techniques of the golden-horned behemoth. This marked the beginning of the next phase of Luofeng's evolution in technique and power. As he sipped wine and reflected on the battle's outcome, Luofeng's thoughts wandered. One thing was now crystal clear. The core of his power as a human and as a golden-horned behemoth could merge, and there might be a better way to combine the close-range combat techniques of both forms. This new realization made his eyes sparkle, as if a brilliant idea was igniting in his mind. A realization slowly emerged. The key to even greater power lay in the harmony between the sword techniques of the human body and the brutal combat techniques of the golden-horned behemoth. This marked the beginning of the next phase of Luofeng's evolution in technique and power.
So what happens next? Alright, thank you for watching until the end, and don't forget to support this channel with likes, subscribe, and comments. That's all from me. Bye.